I'd like to welcome you to the third annual Early Math Symposium. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Carolyn Pfister. I'm one of the Early Math Project, or EMP, team members. Today's presentation and 6 breakout sessions will be livecast. Welcome to our online audience as well. Before we begin, I'd like to mention a couple of housekeeping items. Course credit for the symposium, if you're interested, is available through Fresno Pacific University. There is information about this out on the registration table. I'd also like to note that there is an air wall here, and this will be moved several times throughout the day, so it's very important that we keep furniture or other belongings out of the middle of the room. I'd like to express my gratitude to several people. First of all, to Karen Staff Walters, the Executive Director of the California State Board of Education, to Kristen Wright, who is the Director of the Special Education of the Special Education Division at the California Department of Education, and also to Kim Leahy and other members of the California Department of Finance for their support of early math and this symposium. Thank you, Kim. You're here with us today, and we really appreciate that. I would also like to acknowledge the dedication of my colleagues in the Early Math Project. They go above and beyond all the time for early math, and I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much to the CalStat team out in the lobby who has helped organization. And I'd like to acknowledge the terrific partnership that exists between all of the organizations that pull together to support early math. Thank you so much. This morning, I am honored to introduce somebody who I admire greatly. I'd like to introduce State Board of Education member Patricia Rucker. She will be opening our symposium today. Patricia is a champion of teachers, children, and mathematics. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Patricia Rucker.
Good morning. Okay, let me try that again. As a former third grade teacher, my favorite part of the day was always walking into my classroom and seeing the faces of my students. And my favorite moment was when I got a chance to say this every morning. So help me have that flashback. Good morning, boys and girls. Good morning. Oh, that's much better. Yes. Hello and welcome. To the third annual Early Math Symposium. As Carolyn told you, my name is Patricia Rucker. I'm a member of the State Board of Education. I also like to say I'm a Reformed English teacher. And being a Reformed English teacher means that when I listen to you speak, I won't correct your broken infinitives. So I want to start by just saying thank you. For me as a third grade teacher, I take for granted that the students who are matriculating from their primary grades into my third grade class have some semblance of what it means to be in school. And I have expectations about what I'm supposed to do for them, but I take for granted the amount of work and the amount of time, the amount of engagement, and the amount of planning that was required by my colleagues who were their preschool, kindergarten, first and second grade teachers to send them to my classroom with the skill set that they have. You know what it means to be in an environment where you're accountable for the performance of students on a one-day snapshot. Well, I had the pleasure of teaching before testing became the sole reason why we teach. And education was just for fun in the third grade, and it was more important to make sure they learned something and took something from each lesson. But what I forgot was how important my colleagues' contribution to what I got to enjoy every day in my classroom was. So when I say thank you, it's a personal thank you, not only for the work that you did, but for the fact that I was the beneficiary as a professional from the dedication and the training that you created created for yourself to improve your craft and make sure the students I received were the students who were happy to be in third grade and ready to learn what I had to offer. So it's a very personal thank you that I offer to you today for all those third, fifth, and sixth grade and high school teachers who may never know who you were, but who are the beneficiaries of the work you're choosing to be here today to learn about and do. So thank you in particular today for your interest in mathematics and your attendance at today's symposium. It's critically important for us as educators to understand that every child needs to have both experience and high-quality math education and exploration. Research tells us that children's early experiences with math are as important as early reading and are highly predictive of later school success. Likewise, it's important that we have high expectations about the mathematical ability of all children. Building a strong mathematical foundation in the earliest years opens doors. Math is not only a gatekeeper to college education and college admission, but it facilitates students' seamless transition into a variety of rewarding careers. When we think about those careers, we're not just talking about engineering or medicine, we're also looking at career technical education careers as well. Rich mathematical experiences and persistence and early conversations about the math of everyday life prepare all students to excel in STEM. Personally, I became a lover of math and about math courses very early in my own career as a student. The last time I asked this question, there were actually people in the room who knew this answer. Do the numbers 33, 10, 67, 2 mean anything to anyone in this room? Those 7 digits were the most important digits in my life as a student because that was the home phone number of my high school math teacher, John Rourke. Last time I asked that question, there were 3 people in the room who knew that answer because they were also students in his class. When we entered his class for Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, he gave us his home phone number. Now do that math. You have 150 students a day that you teach, and you gave all 150 students your home phone number. I'm pretty sure his wife said, "You did what?" But I found out years later that maybe only 4 or 5 students a day regularly called him. And I was one of those students. I called to talk to him about the homework assignment. I called to ask him questions about the work we were doing. And I called to ask him why this was important, meaning, is this going to be on the test? I kept doing it even after I left his algebra class. I did it when I went on to geometry. I did it when I went on to calculus. I did it after I graduated from high school and went on to college. I did it when I entered my teacher preparation program, and I called him to talk about ideas I had for the math lesson I was going to present in my class. I called him when I became a teacher. And I called him when I decided to leave the classroom and go back to the university to enter teacher preparation. I asked him, what did he think about that? And what's important to know about John Rourke, my high school algebra teacher, is that I never set one foot in his class. He was my brother's teacher. And he allowed me to call him and talk to him too. And it's because of his dedication to a student who had an interest in math and who really wanted to understand what was going on and why, he gave me that time. And he made me a very, very good 3rd grade math teacher.
Bravo.
So my hope for today is that you'll be inspired to be engaging and to be that kind of teacher that your students will reach out to and remember and know that you gave them something that they can hang on to and that will move their life for the rest of their life. The work that you do with young children makes all the difference. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
This is such a lovely facility, and we are so grateful to CSU East Bay for providing it for the day. I want to thank you so much for that. It's my pleasure right now to introduce to you Dean Carolyn Nelson. And again, thank you so much for your support of today's symposium.
Well, I am so delighted you are here to celebrate teaching and learning of young children focused on math. And one of the things that I recall when the group came here from the Department of Ed and around to plan for this meeting, we did our prep meeting, I was so taken by the story that they told about the importance of how this conference even came to be. And it was actually an encouraging story to me, based on a task force with a group of businesses. This is the Cliff Notes version. Based on a task force with a group of businesses that the governor had convened, and they were concerned about the lack of pipeline that we have in STEM education. And some really, really super smart people with common sense said, well, you know, you have to start earlier in math. And by the way, you have to start clear back in preschool. As someone who was a classroom, and before, it could actually start with families. And, but I thought that was encouraging to me, because when I was a classroom teacher, I was a high school science teacher, biology teacher, but I spent most of my years in middle school, and then as a mentor teacher across the entire pipeline for science education. And I couldn't and then when I went to the university, I taught pre-service teachers, and in not this university, other places, because I've taught in 4 different states. And what I saw was that teachers had a tendency to blame the teachers that went before them, rather than see it as an entire holistic pipeline. So, and I thought, well, now how constructive is that? How helpful is that? In my facetious way of thinking, and of course it wasn't. That's why this university, and later on you'll meet the university president, President Leroy Morita, has really, because we are STEM focused, he's recognized that in order to really have, in STEM, keep your pipeline wide instead of keeping it wide at the beginning and then it narrows for those who actually are successful, which is traditional. He had the idea that it was really important to start early. And then he started reading the research and he says, why haven't we been doing this before? So the other lesson, though, that I have learned over the years is that it takes more than one sector to be successful, to achieve this big, audacious goal of success in mathematics across the pipeline, since it's such a gatekeeper. So cross-sector partnerships in doing this work is huge. So I want to find out who is here today. And it's really interesting to see how many, so let me just start with my groups that I think will be here, but I'm not sure. How many of you are actually teachers of children in early learning?
What do you consider early learning? Are you saying
Preschool. Let's start with preschool. Preschool. Thank you for being here. How many of you are teachers starting with, now look, I've already broken up the groups. Isn't this something? K3. Teachers K3? Okay. How many of you are from a foundation that studies early learning or supports early learning? And this time I'm going to include K3, or preschool, like 0 to 3. Okay, I know there's at least one more. TK? Okay. TK? And how many of you are parents? I know we have some here. Parents. Okay. And I know many of you are in your particular roles. I'm also, as dean of the college, I'm also PI for Hayward Promise Neighborhood. And Hayward Promise Neighborhood is a federally funded project whose goal is to work in cross-sector partnerships to help families increase opportunities for families in neighborhoods that lead toward better improved educational success in the institutions where their kids go. So the city is one of our partnerships. We have actually 11 partners across sector. Some of them are health foundations, some of them are, one is the city, one is, of course, the school district is involved. Who's here from the school district? Is anyone here from HUSD? Kristen? Ah, okay. Fabulous preschools, some of the finest preschools I've seen. And they are intimately involved with this work. Is anyone here from Four Seas Alameda County? Four Seas Alameda County leads, Renee Hertzfeld, leads the work for our early learning network. We have another early learning network that crosses all the pipelines called the Educational Cradle to Career Reform Educational Network, where all the entire pipeline, including university people, are involved in this pipeline, K16, P16. And we also have a health network, and where all of these networks partners come together and work on educational outcomes. And common goals, 10 common goals across our networks. And the reason I bring this up is the lessons from that have been school districts cannot do this alone, preschools can't do this alone, foundations can't do this alone. Unless we have these partnerships, these kinds of conversations, we're going to be doing the same thing 25 years from now. Because these conversations, some of these conversations are not new. But I have recognized that every piece of this pipeline has their strong theoretical beliefs and hopes, and that keeps the conversations very narrow because they don't see themselves as part of a larger group. And I think I might be preaching to the choir here, but I just want to make the point that early learning is everybody's business. Universities, school districts, philanthropic organizations, and unless we all work on it together, we're just going to keep having the same conversations. So thank you so much for being here. I'm delighted you're here. It's one of these events I was just looking forward to ever since I knew we were having it. So I hope you enjoy your day, and I look forward to talking with many of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Megan mentioned when she spoke to us about some of the great things that are happening currently for mathematics in California. Probably many of you are aware already that there is currently a California statewide early math initiative, and that initiative is being led out of the Fresno County Office of Education. Dr. Matilde Soria has graciously agreed to give us a brief update on that, so please welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Matilde Soria. I'm from the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools from the Early Care and Education Department. And as Carolyn shared, woohoo for Fresno. As Carolyn shared, our office is the lead on the California statewide Early Math Initiative. And the purpose of the initiative is to decrease the achievement gap in mathematics with a focus on professional development and coaching for the ECE field, for the early care and education field. And we define ECE as those who work with children from birth to third grade. Before I talk about the different components, I want to share who our partners are on the project. It's a fast-paced project. It's a 21-month project. We have several different partners that are helping us implement. So there's Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, there's our department, Early Care and Education. We're also partnered with our sister department, the STEM of Curriculum and Instruction of Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, with the Ames Center for Math and Science Education, also based in Fresno, California. with the State Board of Education. In fact, the State Board of Ed has graciously allocated one of the staff members a portion of her time to help on the project. With WestEd, who is serving as our independent evaluator, with a very dynamic and innovative film producer, Les Mayfield III out of Southern California, is working with us on developing instructional videos on the project. And then finally, our funding partner and also our thought partner on the project, California Department of Education, the Early Learning and Care Division. So several different partners. Again, it takes a village to raise a child. So our three overarching components, the first is a professional learning and coaching component. And it involves professional learning and coaching. There's a Train the Trainer Institute that will occur. There's coaching, community of practice sessions. And what we're doing is we're inviting 30 different agencies from across the state that are representative of geographic areas, and there's some that are in the room, I see in the back, that are representative of different geographic areas across the state, rural versus urban, different types of agencies. We really wanted to lift up the mixed delivery system within the state of early care and education. And so these 30 agencies will help us to refine and shape the professional learning and coaching model. The second overarching component is the development of family and community resources. There's a variety of different resources that we'll be developing, including interactive exhibits that can be placed in different community settings like museums, libraries, community settings. We'll be piloting in a public housing community center within Fresno, which we're really excited about, in addition to our Lighthouse for Children Child Development Center in the waiting room, which again lifts up the point that children can learn in a variety of different settings. We'll also be developing an inventory of literature on early math and an inventory of early math resources, 32-minute instructional videos, and a host of other instructional material and products for not only those in the field, but also for parents and families. And all of these resources will be made available to everyone for free on the California Early Math Project website at the end of the project period. So finally, the third component is the demonstration and innovative lab. So in Fresno, we have a demonstration site, the Lighthouse for Children Child Development Center, and it'll really serve as a testing ground for all of the different resources, materials, and educational the training and such that we'll be developing throughout the project. Okay. Those of you that are partners in the room, I know I see one of them to my left. If you could raise your hands, who's partnering with us on the project? Awesome. All right. I know that I only have a fragment of the time. Carolyn has a very tight agenda today. And so if you would like more information about the California Statewide Early Math Initiative, please feel free to approach me. I have business cards. I'd be more than happy to talk with you, or you could also talk to one of the individuals that raised their hand. Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to introduce to you CSU University President, East Bay President, Dr. Leroy Morita. We are so grateful to you for your support of early math and the opportunity to hold this symposium at your lovely facility. Thank you, Dr. Morita.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cal State East Bay. We're really glad to have you here, and we're really proud to be able to host this wonderful, important, very, very important event. I believe strongly in early math literacy, as my Dean Carolyn Nelson and others here at the university have taught me that learning math at a very early age, preschool or whatever, or even before, is invaluable. It's just as important as our English literacy and preparation. I didn't know what the heck being kindergarten ready was. Carolyn taught me that. Other people have taught me that. But that, how important it is to have that experience at a young age so that our children's development and brain development can occur so that they can be prepared for math, English, the literacy kinds of things by the time they're ready for kindergarten. And better opportunity for them to succeed. And clearly, our state is in need of more college graduates, but also particularly those in the STEM fields. And without having that kind of preparation, we are already weeding people out. I'm part of we have this East Bay STEM network that was developed here. I'm a co-chair of it. We now have a person from Kaiser Permanente, the executive director there, who's going to be my co-chair. It's a group of bringing business leaders together, people from the nonprofits, from government, with educators, K through 12, community college, four-year universities, talking about the importance of building that pipeline for people to go into STEM. But one of the main areas we focus on is early math literacy and learning about that early math education and how invaluable and important that is to the future of our youth so that they have options. Everybody doesn't have to go into STEM. We don't want everybody to be STEM, right? But we want a lot of people to be ready and prepared if they choose that arena to go into. And that's what it's about, letting our students be ready and prepared. We're proud that, and Dean Nelson has led this, the Hayward Promise Neighborhoods, along with our wonderful community people, our parent advisory group, and others, and our City of Hayward, the school district here in Hayward, Chabot College, our nonprofit, and our health agencies that have worked together, First Five and 4Cs, all the different groups who have come together. And part of that was that preschool, offering in the Hayward school districts for the first time preschools. And we found that through the preschools, what's the percentage? Is it 90%? Over 90% of the children that have gone through that preschool are kindergarten ready, versus Alameda County, which I believe is about 45% kindergarten ready by the time the youth get there. So it's been successful. Part of that is that math, what we're trying to teach and trying to do there. So earlier this last year, I got to go and speak to the Select Assembly Committee on STEM Education, led at that time by Assembly Member Tony Thurman, now our State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And he was very enthralled by all that we had to say about the importance of early math education and how we need to push that forward. So we're very proud that we've been involved in that. I wrote an op-ed on it. I've spoken at the Business Times STEM Summit this past year, also at the East Bay Economic Development Alliance Innovation Awards. It was discussed in terms of how the importance. So it is extremely important, and I'm very pleased that all of you, who are really the people that helped make this all happen, are here to discuss this and talk about ways that you can utilize to help further that. So from my position, I mean, I view it as college president. It's like people say, well, why would you be interested at all in this? Well, it is because it is our future. It is the future of all of education. It's the future of our youth. It's the future of the state of California. Education is the economic driver for the state. It is why we are the 5th largest economy in the world. Did y'all know that? California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We surpassed Great Britain as they've gone through their whole Brexit issue. So if you took us alone, California alone is the 5th largest economy in the entire world. And so it is education that has driven that. It's what provided me this opportunity to be here before you. I'm a first gen. My parents didn't go to college, and I had that opportunity to go. So it's that kind of opportunity that I've wanted for all of our students that come to Cal State East Bay, but all the youth in California who are coming up, and that's what you all are providing in terms of offering choices for them and that opportunity. So I thank you for all the work that you have done, all the great work and all the things that you're doing here today, but I know you go out there and do so much more in all that you do, whether you're teaching, whether you're administrating, whether you're setting policy, whatever you are doing in your roles, I know is invaluable, and I greatly appreciate all the effort and time that you put into the work that you do, but to be here to learn some more from a lot of better, smarter people than me talking about math education. So thank you very much for being here. Again, welcome to Cal State East Bay. I hope that you have been treated well here. I've heard good things that the people that are running this said that they've had good response. I consider this one of the most welcoming universities in the entire state of California. that people here greet you with a smile. They'll look you in the eye, and if you ask for any kind of help or you look like you're lost, they will put out a hand to guide you. So welcome again to our wonderful university. I'm so pleased to see so many of you here working so hard and learning so much, and I know you're going to go out and do more great work that you've already done, but you're going to improve upon that. So thank you very much for being here. Bye.
If you're here today, you may be a math champion, or perhaps you're a math champion in the making. We're here today in part because we believe that every child in the state of California deserves to have a math champion. The ways that adults interact with children, their conversations about math, the opportunities that they provide to children, the conversations they have, all of these things make a remarkable difference in outcomes for children, for their future, for their careers, and their success. We know a few things about children, literature, mathematics. We'd like to share those with you. We know that children are natural mathematicians. Their mathematical thinking and reasoning is ingrained. If you give a toddler several plates of cookies and ask them about them, they'll quickly tell you which one has the most cookies. Most children enjoy math. They enjoy it a lot. If you talk to a preschooler, they'll tell you that they not only enjoy it, but they're good at it. We know that children's perceptions about math are very highly influenced by the important adults in their lives and what they have to say about math. So the messages that we share with children make such a great difference. Sadly, we know that many children's initial enthusiasm for mathematics starts to wane around first grade. Their love and confidence and feeling of success with it really diminishes. We believe that that's preventable. We know that children's understanding of mathematics is often greatly underestimated. And we also know that every single child is born a math person. The notion that only some people can succeed in mathematics is just simply wrong. Opportunity and access are the root of mathematical achievement for every single child, and they need to have that. We know that it is important for children to develop a positive math identity. That's me a long time ago. That's my dad. This is my dad more recently. He'll be 95 this next month. He's still a math champion. I'd like to take a moment to reflect upon what my dad did that made him a math champion to me. Without my dad, I am absolutely certain I would not be here today talking to you about math. I wouldn't have been an elementary or middle school math teacher. I certainly would have never mastered long division. And if you're listening, Dad, I really thank you. My dad made a difference for me because he provided a consistently positive message about mathematics. He shared math in the everyday things, building, doing his taxes, and problem solving. As a child, he helped me understand that math is what allows people to do very important things. He really believed in my ability to succeed in math, and he talked with me about math, and he encouraged my persistence with it. When I found that math was challenging, he didn't give up. He didn't give up even when I wanted to, and that made all the difference. I'd like you to reflect today, as we spend our time together, on what it means to be a math champion, because I truly believe that everyone in this room is either a math champion or a math champion in the making. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you two people who are math champions as your next presenters. So with no further ado, let me introduce to you Kristen Brooks and Kevin Schaefer. Kristen is the Executive Director of Supporting Inclusive Practices at the Riverside County Office of Education. Kevin is the Director of Program Support, Supporting Inclusive Practices for the El Dorado County and the County Charter SELPAs. Both Kristen and Kevin are deeply committed to ensuring that all children receive the supports and learning environments that they need in order to succeed. I suspect, and I've actually confirmed, that both of them would include the ability to remove learning barriers and the belief in the ability of all children as qualities that are important for math champions. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to both of them.
First things first, we would like to thank Carolyn for having us back for the third year. Kristen was year one. She presented on Universal Design for Learning. I was year two. I also presented on Universal Design for Learning. And now we're together for year three, also presenting on Universal Design for Learning. We're going to take a little different approach this year. As Carolyn had mentioned earlier, we work for the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project, and you can also access any of our resources at our Padlet. How many of you have used a Padlet before? It's really just a resource archival platform. If you go to that website, it will connect you with all of the resources in our project. So since we only have an hour, we wanted to connect you with as many resources that you can access after this training as possible. This is just one of them. And it showcases kind of the work that we do as a CDE-funded project that works with 39 different districts on improving inclusive practices, focused on students with disabilities, but really focusing on systems and how we can create systems and structures that allow students with disabilities to participate in general education settings. So we don't dictate what the LEAs do, we just help them do what their priorities that they've already identified lead them to. So, as we get started, I guess I need a clicker. Let's get all my technology together first. And I was trying to think, as we had two presenters talk about their math champions, I was trying to think, who are my math champions? Why do I have such a focus? As a special education teacher previously, who was my math champion? How did I get such an interest in math and understanding the importance of the foundation of math in the preschool setting? And I couldn't come up with a name. But I could come up with the name of Miss Tinoco, who is not my math champion, but she was a champion that let me know that I could be successful in whatever I attempted, that I had meaning, that I had purpose, and I had connection to the educational setting. And that's what Kristen and I are going to talk about. What is that, the importance of that relationship between the teacher and the students so that students develop an identity such that they are able to participate fully in their educational process, beginning in preschool, all the way through college and career. So we're looking at this as a system from the importance and the critical component of what preschool teachers provide their students and how those messages are critical for the rest of their educational setting, but even beyond that. It's not about just the time they're with us. What happens when they leave our system, and have we prepared them systemically through our system so that they have the same opportunities as every other child going through our system, regardless of where they're placed, regardless of their program, regardless of who's teaching them? So that's where we're going today. And we have 90 minutes to do it.
60.
How many?
60.
Oh, 60 minutes. Okay, even less. So, because Kristen and I cannot leave things alone, we added this slide. So this slide isn't in the posting on the website for early math, but we wanted to give you a few more resources. This slide is also on the Padlet that I'm going to tell you about. So the first thing we did, we put the website for the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project. It tells you everything that we do, along with many resources that you can access through our project. We also have social media. So if you're on, how many of you are on Facebook and Twitter? A couple of, that's not too bad. If you're on Facebook and Twitter, you can like us or poke us or whatever they do on social media. And you'll get all of our postings. And we post as many resources, as many materials, as many trainings that are going on throughout the state. So it'll help to keep you informed in either one of those formats. And the last resource is an early math Padlet. So last night, Kristen and I were uploading all kinds of resources related specifically to early math, as well as larger resources like self-assessments. Let's take a look at our program through the lens of inclusion, things like that. So that Padlet, which is another Padlet, we put the address up there. Just go to that address, click on any of the resources you want, download them onto your computer, and they are yours for the rest of your career, okay? But really, really great, up-to-date resources that you can utilize and implement within your organizations and your programs, okay? Now that we got that out of the way, any questions about that? And I'll just reiterate, really, the best resources you're gonna find in one place, okay? I guarantee it. So how many of you have seen Hamilton? How many of you are obsessed with Hamilton and you may not have even seen it? So a couple weeks ago, I saw it in San Francisco. And of course, my two passions are Broadway plays and special education. So when I heard in the script, they're like, this isn't a moment, it's a movement. And I was like, that is inclusion. That is inclusion of all students, specifically students with disabilities. So when we talk about inclusion, it's not a moment. It's not a structure. It's a process and it's a mindset that we know as educators, all students can learn, regardless of race, regardless of sexual identity, regardless of gender, regardless of ability, all students can learn. And it is up to us to have the mindset and the ability to actually include them. Because when we talk about inclusion, we also have to look at exclusion. And that's a really difficult conversation to have. Ask yourself, I'm gonna give you like 15 seconds to reflect. In my class, in my program, who's excluded? Who is not able to access the amazing, wonderful instruction that our teachers and our paraeducators and our volunteers provide? And that's where inclusion starts. How do we include those that are excluded? So we have a quick video. We are looking through our project to scale inclusion. Sometimes we start really small, but the focus, the vision is that we scale. We scale inclusion to ensure that all students are able to participate in high-quality instruction and high-quality programs with the same materials, the same resources, and the same understanding from all teachers. So we're hoping that you see yourselves as a lone nut.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts, 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out. They won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, TED. Thanks.
So how many of you have felt like a lone nut before? And lone nut is not a bad thing. So being a lone nut, how did that connect with you as you watched the video? How did it connect with you and the work that you have done in creating inclusive programs for all students, preschool through third grade? Or was it just a funny video? I'm a special ed.
Are you asking a rhetorical question, or you really want somebody to?
I would love for somebody to answer. Go ahead.
So a long time ago, when I first read about Rec and Racks, I was like, I just want everybody to understand this tool. It was about 22 years ago. And I went to a job interview with one that I'd made, and the one person sitting at the table who was a first grade teacher said, "Oh, that's interesting." And now it's like everybody has Rec and Racks. But at the time, I'm like, I know this is kind of funky. It's handmade. But this is a really wonderful tool. And I was a lone nut then, and now it's like, oh, cool. Other people have joined this.
Now you have followers,
Yeah,
not a
right.
lone nut. And what we look at through our project is teacher leadership. We have leaders who make decisions, important decisions, but it's that teacher leadership component that really scales inclusion and makes sure, and if you're taking notes, I would love for you to write this down. It's up to the teachers to ensure that the initiatives that come from on high, that they're able to create enabling environments. And that's the term that I would like for you to take back with you. You have to have an enabling environment in which to include all students. It means you have to have the training. It means that you have to have the resources. It means that you have to have the understanding of who your students are, to have an enabling environment for all students to be educated, again, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of ability, we have students who are included in these high-quality programs. And what happens, we can say that we believe that all students can learn, that all students should be included. What happens is we have student identities that are created through their relationship with teachers, and we have teacher perceptions and assumptions of who these kids are and what they're able to do based on what we see in some cases. And that's why I use the term assumption. So when we talk about identity, students come to the classroom with all of their identities intact, right? Guess what happens when we look at ability or disability? All of those identities are combined into that one identity of disability, that idea of deficit, that idea of what you can't do. And that's part of what we have to change. Your ability, your diversity, your difference is additional positive to the classroom functioning. It's up to us to figure out who the kid is in the environment in which they're being educated. Okay? We have one more short video. How many of you are familiar with Kati Novak? Kati Novak is the queen guru of everything universal design for learning. She has written books, she speaks, she's in California all the time. She is a huge proponent of inclusion. So we have webinars, and we had Kati come do a series of 4 webinars focused on universal design for learning, access, and equity. And she tells a personal story that we thought was very pertinent to the information being shared today. So Kati's in the little icon up on the right. And she's talking about her 2 children
brother, the
and their
friend,
friend.
and that's one of their best friend, James. And James has Fragile X syndrome, and he's almost completely nonverbal, and obviously, significantly developmentally delayed cognitively. And they are just the 3 best of friends. And the really cool thing about this story here is that, Aylin, from the first time she met him, she was like a warrior for James. And so when he was in 1st grade, when he gets really excited, he flaps his hands a little bit. And so he was running outside doing tag, and he was flapping his hands, and a bunch of little girls went up to him and said, "Why do you always do that with your hands?" And Aylin sees this across the playground, and she comes like busting across. And I hear this from a teacher who's my colleague. And she said, "Hey, ladies, if you're gonna mess with someone, you're gonna have to mess with me." And this is just like a little ball of fire. Now, I'll tell you something else about my daughter, Aylin, which is that she has severe combined type ADHD. And for all the amazing strengths and beauty and fire she brings into this world, she can also be really impulsive and dangerous and violent. And those are ways that you could describe her, but that's not her. She's just Aylin, and she brings all these amazing strengths to the classroom, and she also brings these amazing areas that she needs to work on. And so what's really beautiful about this picture to me is that Brecken is significantly above grade level, and James is significantly below grade level. And Aylin exhibits behaviors that most classroom teachers will never, ever want to see. But the 3 of them are in the same class together all day, every day, and they are challenged and they are supported equally because of universal design for learning. And in most places in this world, they would be separated. And they would be separated because there would be a belief that Brecken deserves more, that he deserves better, and that James can't do it, and that Aylin doesn't belong there because she can't behave. And what I will tell you is I will fight this fight until every parent of all of these kids gets to see that they belong together, that in this world, we all belong together. And when you separate them, what you're saying is that James and Aylin have nothing to offer Brecken, and they do. They all have equal amazing things to offer each other.
And that's where we're headed. That's what we would like to see in every classroom, is how students work together, even though, and this is a UDL term that I'm about to use, there's variability in our students' ability. Does that make sense? How many of you have ever had a class where every student is at the same level, at the same time, right? That has never happened. So we have to plan for the variability of the learners that are coming to us, just like the 3 children on the screen. That variability and whether or not we can actually challenge students at their level leads to expert learners. So I just threw at you a couple of UDL terms: variability of learners leading to expert learners, and we want all students to be expert learners. In doing so, they all have to benefit from that high quality instruction that puts them into the driver's seat of our lesson planning.
Excellent segue here. So when we look at this slide, has this been driving our assessment and our instruction, the average? You guys are familiar with this bell curve, right? Exactly average, 50th percentile. Many of our publishers really zone in on this average learner, this myth of the average that, as Kevin mentioned, we're going to teach all students at the same time in the same way because they're at the same level. Well, we know that's not the case, right? I'm a speech pathologist by trade, and so as the diagnostician part of me, I would go out and do evaluations for preschool students and determine if they were 7th percentile and below, Would they meet eligibility for a speech or language impairment? If so, make that referral, determine if they require special education supports and services. Always looking at where they are in relationship to this mythical average. Well, we know so much more about students now. Brain research is showing us that there is no average learner, and that's where the variability that Kevin mentioned comes into play. Because we vary in our body types just as much as our learning styles. When we look around the room, there is no average, right? We fluctuate so much in our height, in our weight, in our thighs, in our torsos, as much as we do in our memory and our understanding of reading and vocabulary and math skills. We are all over the place. We look more like this, right? Don't our learning profiles and our fluctuations in weight, now that it's summertime, woo, we're all over the place, right? So we vary, not just in one area, but across the board. So when we talk about universal design for learning, you'll hear a lot of presenters give the analogy of a buffet, that we don't want to provide instruction in just one way. There isn't just one way to learn something, right? And that there's variability across the board. So we want to be flexible in how we present information, how we allow our students to provide options and choice for demonstrating what they learn, know, and can do. So here's a little analogy. When we're doing our lesson planning, universal design for learning is very specific in terms of how we lay out those lesson plans and how we go about constructing our lessons. And we start with goals. What's the point, right? What's the purpose of that lesson, that day, that instruction, that theme? How are we going to assess what students learn, know, and can do? What methods are we going to employ for teaching? Is it going to be group, station teaching, co-teaching? Is it going to be direct instruction? What method are we utilizing? And what materials do we need? So in this analogy, let's say that my goals are that I want to host a brunch on Sunday for 10 of my friends. I only want to go to the grocery store one time, and I want to provide as much social opportunity as I can for my guests for that day. So I decide that I'm going to make Mexican lasagna for everybody coming on a Sunday. Who might be excluded or included in that Mexican lasagna? Dairy-free, gluten-free. Anybody have kids that would look at this and go, no way, right? So right away, if you provide one choice, one way to host that brunch, you already know you have people who are going to say, I'm going to eat before or after, right? Because I already know what she's serving. So what if we instead planned for variability? And we said, you know what, we're going to do a pizza, build your own pizza. Could you opt in or out for the gluten, right? Some folks on protein, you may have just a pile of sausage and pepperoni and cheese, right? Me. That's Kevin, that's right, that would be his pile over there. So planning for variability, but going back to my goals. Still had my 10 friends. Did I go to the grocery store once? Yep. Opportunities for socialization, because I didn't even have to cook, right? So you still met your goals. So clear goal, flexible means. So what that means is just consider the learners in our classrooms and how we can't just serve them one meal. We really have to plan for variability, and it goes back to what Kevin said in terms of knowing our students. It is so critical to know our kids to be able to plan for variability and invite them to the table, right? Invite them to that math table.
So we have a quick activity, and the activity is usually people getting up and moving to the sides of the room. We were a little bit nervous in creating chaos this early in the day, so we're just going to have you do it at your tables, just to kind of demonstrate that all students have variability in their strengths and the areas in which they need to improve. So we have a continuum, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. Stage 1 is, I'm unable to perform this task. And I'm going to give you the tasks in a second. Stage 2 is you're able to perform the task, but you need assistance. Stage 3, able to perform the task independently, but not proficiently. And then stage 4, you are proficient at performing the task on your own. Okay? So what we'd like you to do is just hold up fingers on which stage, when given the activity, you feel that you are in. Okay? So your first activity,
Honesty counts.
Skating. What?
Honesty counts.
Honesty counts. So put your finger up, and where you would, in that continuum, be with the expectation for ice skating. We've got 3s, we've got 1s. It kind of looks like your class when you are implementing a math lesson, right? They're all over the place. I put that up there because I'm a 4. I was a competitive ice skater for about 12 years. So 4, right? We're gonna have to talk later. Okay, so if the lesson goal was ice skating, I would be gifted. However, my 4, when I go to my next activity, guess what? Now I'm a 1. How about you? Where would you put yourselves? 2s, 1s. Do we have any? We got a 3. So it's interesting. It's interesting that I went from the gifted class to now I'm in the class where students are below grade level, right? Let's look at one more. We'll make it a math one. Oh, I've got a 4. I'm staying where I am. I'm in that same class at number 1. So let's think about that. A 4, Patricia? Awesome. We had more 4s, I think, that time than of any of the other 2 activities.
Right, that's right.
But what happens? In our minds, when we go back to the idea of identity, and I love the term intersectionality. Intersectionality is the intersection of students' characteristics and qualities. When we look at them through one lens, through ability or disability, we're not getting the whole picture. Because even with a disability, with an IEP, students have strengths that we can capitalize on, that we can promote in the class, because if I'm removed from that class just by fact of being removed, the question is, what is the message for my self-perception that is being sent to me? I know there is something wrong. I know I need to be excluded. And if I don't know why, guess what that results in? Shame. In our society, what we don't talk about results in shame. And that shame grows from preschool to 1st grade to 8th grade to high school. And that impacts negatively their outcomes in college and career. And this is how we separate kids. It's an IEP kid. It's a 504 kid. He's an English language learner. He goes over there. Think about the message. So we're going to look at lesson planning through the lens of UDL, through variability of learning, and we look at barriers and solutions. So in the lesson planning phase, if we can identify those barriers, then we can implement solutions. And we can look at them in 3 areas: academic barriers, physical sensory barriers, and social emotional barriers. And on the early learning website, I think we posted a couple charts, and we also posted this information that will help you identify what the barriers are and possible solutions based on how students learn. In the academic arena first, looking at students who have language or vocabulary deficits as the barrier for accessing, here are things that you can do. You can pre-teach. You can add pictures and symbols, and this is all around universal design for learning to ensure that you are implementing prior to teaching the lesson what students need. Identify the barriers. It could be attention. How many of your students have attention difficulties? 99%, right? So these are just some suggestions in the academic, physical sensory, students who have difficulty accessing technology, students who need movement, again with attention, vision, hearing, and other physical challenges. We have to make sure that we have access to the resources in order to connect with students to provide that access. If we don't know our kids, we can't provide the support. And then finally, social emotional variability. A lot of students that we're dealing with in trauma, exhibited in behaviors. Question is, do they belong? Do they not belong? Who do we value? Who do we not value? Really tough questions. And the other item that you have, we put these all together in the continuum of the early learning foundations, 48 months, 60 months, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. So through the lens of barriers and solutions, When we look at our lesson goals, and these would be our lesson goals depending on the grade that we teach, for a student, and they build on each other. So in kindergarten, understand addition as putting together and adding to, and understand subtraction as taking apart and taking from. Question is, when I teach that as my lesson objective, what are my barriers as the teacher? And what barriers will my students experience? How do I mitigate them? How do I mitigate the barriers, break down the barriers, and provide that access? Okay, so like I said, there's a chart on the website that you can utilize when you're doing your lesson planning. Okay.
All right, how many are familiar with the term funds of knowledge? A few? Oh, that's great. Great, great. So funds of knowledge is really our experiences, what we're bringing to the table, right? Our culture, our history, our values, our beliefs, our attitudes. And sometimes we don't consider what our kids are bringing to the table, right? We may say we're at a point where we need to accept our students as individuals with their abilities and disabilities, but we're beyond that. We're beyond accepting. Now we need to embrace and to celebrate what our kids bring to the table, to be able to connect, to understand and plan for this variability, and understand what prerequisites our kids need before they go into that next lesson. Right? So funds of knowledge, not making assumptions about our kids based on our own funds of knowledge. Well, because I was amazing at math, which I was not, that means that all my kids will be able to, my kids meaning my own kids, will be amazing at math, right? My experience must be the same as your experience. We all have very different experiences, and Kevin just mentioned our kids come to school with a whole host of background, of history, of culture. And we need to celebrate, accept, embrace, and really connect with our kids and understand their world so that we can create a safe environment, an enabling environment for our students to learn and grow. So this is a quick video about funds of knowledge and really what our assumptions mean in terms of teaching our kids. So it's about problem solving, compassion, and empathy for our kids, right? Really understanding where our kids are coming from so that we can create these enabling environments for them to be successful. They're not all going to come to school ready to learn, right? They're not all going to come to school and say, math is my favorite thing every day of the week. So we need to embrace where they're at, their experiences, and create better experiences for them going forward. And our state director of special ed, Kristen Wright, who Carolyn mentioned earlier, really emphasizes this piece, presuming competence. Just because a student comes to you from a certain background or their grades from last year or they have a disability so they have an IEP, we have to presume competence and not just assume based on maybe our funds of knowledge or our just assumptions in general that our students aren't able to learn at high levels, right? Always presuming competence. Because of this self-fulfilling prophecy, have you guys heard the Pygmalion effect? Right? We are the biggest factors in this influence on our kids. So if I say, you know what, you did a great job. I knew you could do it. I gave you all the resources to do it. You did it. You succeeded. Awesome. I knew you could. Versus, oh, I'm sorry. I really didn't think you could. And that's why I didn't give you as many resources. And see, you just didn't rise to the occasion. Sorry about that. That's how it happens, right? Our self-fulfilling prophecy. So our attitudes, our beliefs impact our kids every day, right? The more encouraging words, that positive praise, that giving them opportunities for reteaching and reviewing is going to make a whole difference for our kids with their math identity now and into the future. This is a slide from one of Kati Novak's presentations for our project. And at the bottom is her progression rubric that really relates to universal design for learning, but what Kevin alluded to earlier in terms of creating expert learners, and that they don't all come, ready to learn, but it's our job to progress toward expert practice to create expert learners. And are you guys familiar with the John Hattie study? Meta-analysis of all meta-analyses, and these hinge points and effects on student achievement and outcomes. And one of the biggest factors is collective teacher efficacy. Do we believe that we have the skills and the capabilities to teach all learners at high levels? Huge impact on student achievement just based on our capabilities and our belief systems, right? And that comes along with professional development and ongoing coaching and building collective capacity to support all learners. Second one, self-reported grades. How often at preschool to third grade are our kids involved in showing what they learn, know, and can do in different ways versus just giving them an A or a happy face on a page? Are they really involved in what was the goal of the lesson? How well did they think they did? Turn in your best work, show me what you know in different ways, and be engaged in how they judge their competency and their mastery. And then the last one up there is teacher estimates of achievement. How well we think our kids are going to do coming in the door, right? These are huge factors in terms of how our students will truly achieve in the end and demonstrate what they learn, know, and can do. So I'll give you a second to read this one. So self-efficacy being more predictive of a student's actual ability to problem solve than their self-concept, their perceived usefulness of math, their prior experience, or their gender. So student self-efficacy along with teacher collective efficacy. Do kids feel like they have the ability to rise to the occasion? That's what that's all about. And one of the factors of self-efficacy is vicarious experiences, and what some of our presenters today already alluded to in terms of those math champions. So those vicarious experiences, who are your models? Who are your mentors? Who are you modeling after to help build your own self-efficacy? My math champion was Mr. Gil Brown, Mariposa Elementary School in Redlands, California, and he actually had t-shirts. He was a big golden retriever fan, and we were the math dogs. And so we wore these t-shirts and we're so proud to be in his math class. And he taught to the very learners in our classrooms. He brought a guitar to class. And I always remember the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, because we had a song that went with it, because he taught us in different ways. And he embraced all of the abilities and inabilities that we brought to the class every day, and we were so proud to be a part of this math dog class, right? He was my math champion. My self-efficacy went up in terms of math because I always remember Mr. Brown from very early on. He was my vicarious role model. And it also has a stronger effect on the choice of math-related careers versus math anxiety. How often do we hear, oh my gosh, my math anxiety, I can't take this test, right? I can't ever be an engineer, right? I can't ever go into the math and sciences because I have all this anxiety. That's not the case. You can have anxiety, but your self-efficacy has a stronger effect on the career that you choose versus any type of in-the-moment anxiety you may have had. So this building of self-efficacy along with that teacher collective efficacy. Huge impact. One of our colleagues introduced us to this concept of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Has anybody ever seen this before? No? All right. It really is about perceptions. What our perceptions of our skills are. So when we talk about ours, I'm talking about educators as well as students. What are our perceptions about our abilities? And often we find that those who are lower performing have higher perceptions of their skills. So maybe they think they don't need to prepare for that test as well, or they don't need to go to that staff training because they already know it all. And on the opposite end, we have folks who are very high performing who don't think that they know as much, right? And then they suffer from that low self-esteem. So what you find is that in the very beginning, as we're building wisdom, which is knowledge plus experience, we have this high confidence coming out of the gate. Maybe I went to one training on UDL and I'm an expert in universal design and I don't need to go to any more and I can totally implement this in my classroom. And then when it comes to the real experience, we get to this valley of despair. Going, uh-oh, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, right? This is the point that we need to pull our kids out of and our teachers out of collectively to be able to go to the slope of enlightenment and sustain over time and really build this knowledge collectively. So coming out of that valley of despair, we often find our kids, was it you, Patricia, who mentioned first grade, right? That's where we're seeing that valley of despair, right? So how do we collectively get our kids beyond that and get our own colleagues beyond that to where we can sustain over time and increase our knowledge together? So we don't want to fall into this effect.
Which leads us to looking at our lesson planning through the lens of what are the prerequisite skills that students need in order to be successful in the lesson that I'm going to be teaching. So one of those prerequisites that we really have to look at is self-efficacy. The primary barrier for a student to access high-quality instruction may be their own self-perception of their ability to perform the task successfully. So isn't it interesting that if I'm teaching a math lesson, a prerequisite skill could be that I need to ensure the students have the confidence, the self-efficacy, and the support from me to be successful. Many times we think about prerequisites from the lens of, well, do they have the math skill to move to the next level of math skill that we're going to teach? It goes way beyond their skill in math. It goes into what we talked about earlier. Do they have the attention to sustain? Do they have the executive functioning skills to organize their thoughts, to prioritize the lesson and the activity that I want them to perform successfully? So when we look at designing our lessons, we have to look at the method that we're going to utilize in that lesson and whether or not only the students have the skill in math, but do they have the skill in social emotional learning? Do they have the behavior? Do they have the attention? Do they have the processing in order to be successful? So in the prerequisite skill, in our lesson planning, again, we talked about barriers and we talked about solutions. Now we're talking about the identification of prerequisite skills after we've broken down the barriers. Now we're going to make sure that we address proactively what students need before I implement the lesson. Does that make sense? And we're looking at social emotional, we're looking at the ability to communicate. And when you think about pulling it back to students with disabilities, what are the primary disabilities of students in your class? What would you say? Not a rhetorical question. Would you say communication? Students who require speech and language support? Behavior. What about the ability to connect to a peer? Right? How do I appropriately interact with a peer? Could that be a prerequisite to a math lesson? It's a huge component. Let's add to that. I'm going to implement the math lesson, and I'm going to utilize group instruction. Group instruction in and of itself requires appropriate interactions with peers. So a prerequisite for a math lesson could be, I need to teach them the routine. I need to teach them how to interact with each other. I need to then teach them what's the math skill. Secondarily, thirdly. So the math skill itself could be down the line in priorities after I've taught them how to actually sit and access the information. Any questions about that? Okay. So we've also included a chart on the website that looks at prerequisite skills through the lens of building among the standards. So we have the two foundations, 48 and 60 months. We have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, and how they build. And we talked earlier about preschool being the foundation, all the way through college and career. So going back to self-efficacy, if we put students in control of their learning at preschool, let's follow this through. When they go into first grade, I'm going back to students with disabilities, when they get into first grade, when they get into second grade, and we teach them about themselves within the educational environment, that leads to them taking control of the development of their IEPs. How many of you have heard of student-led IEPs? Because when they get into middle school, when they get into high school, they run their own IEPs in many cases. In order to do that, they have to know themselves. They have to know their strengths. They have to know their areas of deficit. They have to know who they are in the learning environment in order to run that IEP meeting with a bunch of adults sitting around the table. So we're putting the onus back on the student with our support to connect them to their educational career. See how it all connects? All the way through the system. Especially for students with disabilities who are curious about what's wrong and how we switch that dialogue. And then lastly, before we watch the last quick video, how many of you are familiar with Shelley Moore? She's from Canada, and she is a fireball around inclusion. She has videos, this is our favorite, and she talks about teaching to the margins. And when you teach to the margins, guess what? Everybody benefits, right? So when you know something about a student with a disability, and you implement an instructional strategy, 9.9 out of 10 times, that instructional strategy will benefit all the kids in the class to move forward. So as we close, right on time, any questions, comments, concerns, pushbacks? Kick us out. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just made me think that when you're trying to put the IEP back onto the students, that's a hard task to, that's a hard goal. Because as a parent of a child with disabilities, I'm fighting the system, and also I'm putting that onto my son to fight the system. That's a hard.
So there's a whole lot. Did everybody hear the question? It's a really difficult task to put the IEP process back on a student. Here's the thing. Parents and teachers will have to navigate just how much involvement will benefit the student. But if we don't, there's the whole idea around self-efficacy. But then if we don't teach our students how to self-advocate for themselves, and it's the self-advocating that they're gonna have to be able to do when they leave our system. And just a really quick story, I met with the Director of Program Support for Students with Disabilities at Sacramento City College. And I wanted to know why students with disabilities at the college level were dropping out and they're not successful in their 2-year program. And her response floored me. Any ideas of why students with disabilities were dropping out?
They didn't get help.
It is not that you're close. She said because they didn't get help. Let's pull the question back a little bit. They didn't get help because they didn't ask for help. They didn't know who to ask. They didn't know how to ask. They didn't know what to ask for. And this is the part that floored me. She said, students who come to us who have had IEPs don't want anybody to know that they have a disability. And it is that has been the barrier for students to be successful. And if we don't switch that dialogue, if we don't switch that script to say you are a member of this classroom and you benefit and the students benefit and I benefit from your presence, then they are going to get that message, that subliminal message that we may not even realize that we're sending.
And it also goes back to the John Hattie study, self-reported grades. So once they get to the IEP, that's a little bit older, right, to have that input. But self-reported grades and engaging in their learning and how they can show what they learn, know, and can do, and options and choice begins very, very early. And we know the huge impact that if they're engaged in their learning and how they're being assessed and what's the goal, what's the point, oftentimes kids will go to their own IEPs and go, I don't even know I had what's an IEP? I don't even know I've had goals for how long? Wait, now you're telling me and I'm in 8th grade that I have an identified disability? So if we don't sort of clue kids into this whole education thing early on, it is going to feel like you mentioned the word, a battle, right? A struggle. We don't want this to be a struggle for kids. This is a collaborative, collective engagement in their learning process and getting them involved early on. I see some hands back here. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my concern is that, okay, I have a special need kid, and he's a little older in the system, been in there a whole time in the school district. And when you're doing the IEP and the teachers there, and as a parent, you're expecting the leadership of the group that's overseeing this IEP with him to give you the knowledge as a parent to say, okay, we should be gearing him to make his own decisions. Now, there's nothing in the IEP that tells you, which I think you should have based on what you're saying, which I wish I had for my son, he's 21 now, that marks that he's aware of being independent, that should be marked, is his proficiency, understanding that he will be self-efficient as advocacy, what level it is. That's not on the IEP. That would be a great thing. Yeah. Because then it lets the teacher know, the parent know, anybody else you have in that group that's attending, to be able to know what the need is for their role and how much assistance is needed. And then you can see a progression as well, right? So if you're starting early, like you said, that's fabulous. I wish I had that. And then as they get to know that, and if that's in the IEP, you can watch the progression if it's happening. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
And the IEP really being an iterative process, right? It shouldn't just be something you write at the beginning of the year and you check on it at the next annual. That the area on that IEP, the strengths, the weaknesses, the preferences, and also as we get to transition meetings and really including that language, I think instead of looking at the IEP as a checkbox for compliance, because we know compliance doesn't equal equity, right? Just because all the boxes are marked and the meeting happened on time does not mean that we're providing equitable education. So using that document and that process, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, prepare. So where else? I'm sorry, over here first. I think you had your hand up. Excuse me.
Morning. I think UDL is a really powerful framework for our students and for us as teachers as well. What I think would be even better is thinking about explicitly about our multilingual learners and using the words bilingual education or the model of dual language specifically, or other positive forms of bilingual education, and how that itself is such a huge support for multilingual learners. And that just saying those words, even because I've gone to so many UDL talks and I don't hear the words bilingual education nor the model of dual language. And especially now that we have the legislation passed in California where it's legal again. And I would love to see that explicitly mentioned.
There was another couple hands back here.
I'm going to give Kristen the opportunity to exercise today. Yeah. She can run the microphone.
The opportunity.
The opportunity to have a child voice their abilities and their strengths and the areas that need extra support is not only best practice, it is critical. After school, they're in the job. They are getting jobs, and let me tell you, as a parent of a child, an adult child with disabilities, they do not tell employers. There are laws to protect them, but it is like a big target on their back. They need, and this is a child that has had opportunities to participate as a partner in an IEP. So it is not only best practice, it is critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, we often talk about finding your voice, right? We don't need to find it, we have it. We just need a platform to share it, right? And a safe space. So thank you for saying that. Someone else back here.
Sorry. I know you said about as they get older, they advocate, but this is my first year. I'm in a Head Start, so we deal with IEPs. And we start them at 3, and we got the parents. But we said, okay, in the first year, they said, okay, even for 3-year-olds, they need speech. And the parents are all, some of them take them straight and have them evaluated. Some are like, oh, we can wait. And through this year, I found out that these are last-minute parents, and it's like, well, they're going to start kindergarten. They need speech. Well, we've told you for 2 years, and we've tried any advice to push them more. Because we're trying to encourage the parents, and I think they get the same way as an older child, is that I don't want everybody to know, or I don't know what they think they can wait. And the first 5 years are so critical.
Yeah. And just a really quick story. I was first grader and second grader, and I had speech services. And it was 1972, so it was before special ed was a thing. Like, there weren't even IEPs at that time. I remember vividly the emotional connection that I had being asked to leave the classroom and go to the speech class. 52 years later, I remember my speech teacher's name. I remember the feeling it was like to walk through the school, through the upper grades to get there. I remember the 2 students who were in the speech class before me. Is how deep that emotional connection is of being separated and not knowing why. So it's beyond just the service. It's how we provide the service and how that service is perceived by the student.
And breaking down those barriers, because we are those adults who construct the systems, the supports, and the services, right? So I'm sure I was one of the speech therapists pulling Kevin into my classroom early on as a speech therapist. And I remember the rule in that school was that you had to call the students over the intercom in the classroom because they didn't want the phone to ring. I don't know which one was more distracting, the phone ringing or walking in the classroom. But calling over the intercom, Johnny, it's time for speech. So now imagine if that parent wants their student to have that service. No, I think I'll skip working on basic language and problem with K and G sounds, right? So it's how we set up these systems that create those enabling environments and those safe conditions. Yes, in the back.
I want to speak to early childhood in this situation and speak to what you just said. I used to feel that way in regards to why don't parents follow through? And I can now speak from the other side as a grandparent to 5 children that have special needs. I've been through hearings, I've been through it all. And I think I was given that gift of going through this because of my judgment of some of our parents who are faced with this very daunting task of having an imperfect child that they're facing. They go through a mourning period, they go through so much. And I think we need to be much more careful about how we support and open our hearts to these families. I'm so nervous talking about this. Let me just shake this off. I found that it can be very adversarial when you're trying to get support for a child with special needs. And so many of our parents just don't know the laws. They don't have that understanding. I'm still gaining it, and I'm very much into advocacy. So we just need to be very supportive and patient and get them all the resources that they need, and we need to fight for this. There's not enough money within the school districts, and so, children are chosen or put into different categories to be able to get those services. I've just seen it all. It's opened this whole world for me. And I really applaud the 2 of you being so involved in this. And we just need more advocacy, more training, more understanding, more patience. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying I've been there. Anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. So we've been told that we need to stop talking.
Okay. Are you okay?
But Kristen and I will stay after if you want to have a conversation or more information. But please go to the resources that I showed you at the beginning. The PowerPoint is on your website. Go to Shelley Moore. She's awesome. And watch the video. She uses the bowling.
Kristen and Kevin, thank you.